All right. And we are back. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the B.E.A.M stream. I'm Leonard Millsaps, and B.E.A.M stands for Broadcast Examination of Art and Media. So today we are going to be discussing episodes 1 and 2 of the brand new Marvel Studios animated series, What If? And what a series it's been so far. But first, I want to say thank you guys who consistently tune in and watch our stream. And thank you in advance to everybody who's going to be watching in the future. So we really appreciate the views and we appreciate the comments and engagement in the stream while we're, of course, discussing. So keep them coming. Alongside me, I've got Darius.
Greetings.
Anna, and Mo. So what we're going to do right now is we're just going to get into a quick recap of episode 1 of What If, titled What If Captain Carter Were the First Avenger? And yours truly will go ahead and kick it off. So we start off the episode with a brief recap of what happened in the traditional MCU timeline with Captain America's origins. We're taken to the lab where the super soldier serum is applied just moments before it's going to happen. Only this time, the moment that the Watcher in the series points out, the critical moment is when Agent Carter or Peggy Carter decides to stay on the lab floor versus going up into the booth. And so, the Watcher points that out, and it changes everything. Starting with the bomb that went off, it was less devastating before in the regular timeline, but it's really devastating now. The Colonel's killed, Steve is crippled, on top of Erskine getting shot, and once the threat is stopped, the sleeper guy is neutralized. Agent Carter gets into the chamber and is infused with the super soldier serum. Post-transformation, Peggy is immediately met with some sexism courtesy of the cupcake of a gentleman, Colonel Flynn. They draw blood from her in hopes of recreating the serum later, which is similar to the traditional sacred timeline. We cut to Peggy hitting the punching bag, and she's throwing around dumbbells to release some justified stress. And, she gets a little bonding time with Steve. We cut to Hydra and Johann Schmidt. They're in Tonsberg seeking out the Tesseract, and they eventually secure it. Howard Stark suggests that they should go after the Tesseract, but Colonel Flynn dismisses that plan of action. We see Peggy having a glass of whiskey in the next scene, and Stark convinces her to go after the Tesseract, and he presents her with a sharp new uniform and the vibranium shield emblazoned with the Union Jack. Captain Carter then proceeds to put an epic beating on Hydra, secures the Tesseract, and also Chief Hydra scientist Arnim Zola. Upon delivering the Tesseract, she demands a promotion to captain, and she makes sure Stark gets a hold of the new toy. In Peggy's next mission, she goes to rescue Bucky Barnes and the 107th, and she successfully does it. And on the way out, they encounter heavy tank fire, and they're pinned down. Captain Carter requests air support, and who arrives? None other than Steve Rogers in a Tesseract-powered armor dubbed the Hydra Stomper. Peggy, they absolutely wreck Hydra and save the day. And then what do we get next? We get a montage of more just A-tier ass whipping, like just the likes we haven't seen before. So excellent eye candy, cool Hydra Stomper and Captain Carter team up. So at this point, the Nazis are reeling, and the Fuhrer sends his top brass to bring Smith and Hydra back into the main fold. They demand his compliance, but he says that he's a god and he doesn't answer the men. Kills the messengers and reveals his red skull while professing that Hydra will rise from the Third Reich's ashes. We get a touching scene between Steve and Peggy, and before they express their admiration for each other romantically, Howard interrupts saying, "Barnes stole a Jeep." And then we get to go to the next scene in which Captain Carter, the Hydra Stomper, and the Howling Commandos head to intercept a Hydra train to apprehend the Red Skull and end the war. It turns out to be a trap. The train explodes, and Steve is presumed dead. So, in retaliation, Carter and the Howling Commandos move to attack the Castle Kraken, or Crake, which is the Hydra HQ. They infiltrate the castle, split into two groups. Captain Carter and Howard Stark run up on a Red Skull who's opening up a portal and inviting Hydra's champion, an extra-dimensional monster, to come through, while Bucky and the Howling Commandos they encounter Steve and the Hydra Stomper. Bucky helps Steve into the Hydra Stomper and powers him up, and he flies to help Peggy. For its first trick, the Hydra monster immediately squishes Red Skull, and then Peggy and Howard work to counteract the monster. They find a panel, and Howard reverses the suction on the portal, which immediately sucks the beast back in, or begins to suck the beast back in. And from there, the monster. Well, whoops. Sorry. So from there, Steve shows up in the Hydra Stomper and saves Peggy, who's starting to get pulled with the monster into the portal. The monster uses a sonic scream attack, and Steve flies the Howling Commandos out of earshot. Steve returns to the fight to find Peggy pushing the creature back into the portal. He uses the last of the Stomper's energy to help, and he's forced to watch her disappear through the portal with the monster. And of course, he's very dejected after that. We fast forward 70 years into the future, where Fury activates the Tesseract alongside Hawkeye, and Captain Carter emerges. And that's where we leave off that episode. So yeah, this series, I'll kick it off. Man, I mean, all right. So when I first heard about What If, I was like, okay, What If? That sounds cool. I remember the comics. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Then I believe Mo mentioned in our Loki series that this is not just a series that's going to exist on its own. We may see some Doctor Strange is going to have effects, and I was even more excited. Then episode 1 dropped, and I at 3 a.m. was wide-eyed excited and just craving more. So I'm sure that you guys had a similar reaction. Impression on it. I'm going to start with Darius. Let's just go ahead there.
I'm an animation junkie, as many of you guys know, and I was just like, oh wow, this is some very nice stuff. I was just completely floored by the techniques that they were using, and I used to grab a periodic What If sometimes. So seeing something like that realized here on screen, I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm listening to Jeffrey Wright's smooth voice. I've always been a big fan of his. So listening to him verbalize Watcher, I'm like, dang, I could just spend a whole 30 minutes just listening to this brother, man. This cat's awesome. And it was fun seeing little things, and I was just trying to see like how it was going to branch off, and I was like, okay, what are they going to do with what are they going to do here with how Red Skull's going to be playing out? And I still enjoy Steve and Peggy's romance still taking place, even though we're in a different universe. It's their story has always been fun to check out. And I kind of want to talk about that creature that they wind up fighting at the end. But if I'll go crazy.
Let's go ahead and we'll get to that during the discussion. But
yeah,
first,
go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, sounds like you enjoyed it. And so, yeah, let's go on to Mo and then Anna.
I've always been a fan of What If. That is actually one series that, regardless of its iteration, I've always been a huge fan of stories of alternate timelines and sort of the path least taken. So in my lifetime, to see that this show exists, that Disney and Marvel decided, you know what, this is a show we're going to go ahead and put out there, is phenomenal. Because for us as fans, we know the template. We know the template of Captain America and Iron Man, Spider-Man. We know what their origins are, what the beats are of their story. It's amazing to be able to say, well, that's great, but let's look at another scenario and put them in this other scenario and see what they, how they react to it, and how things change, how things maybe stay the same. And that actually sort of falls into this first Avengers episode, because this episode really almost, even though you have a role reversal, if you will, the story ends the same. It ends actually with Captain Carter sacrificing herself, or at least to the public and to the audience, sacrificing, only to find out that she resurfaces, 70 plus years later, in the presence of no less than Nick Fury and Hawkeye, which leads you to know that this will be a universe where she will be now the captain that leads the team. So it's so cool to see that. It's so cool to see the Watcher and the narration of just sort of like it gives you a little bit of a vibe of for those of us who are fans of the Twilight Zone. It's sort of a five. The Roger Sturgis sort of Rod Sterling, not Roger Sturgis, Rod Sterling, sort of just like, imagine if you will this,
Right.
and guiding you through this scenario where you're just sort of like, you don't know what to expect, you don't know how that story is going to end, because even though you understand the template, this is a completely different story that's going to end maybe completely in a different area. And the comic books were great about that, because the comic books would put you in a situation where this one little change makes a huge wave. It's a butterfly effect.
Right.
And you get a completely new story, and I'm here for it.
Cool. Anna.
So I think I mentioned it during our last stream that this was the one besides Falcon and the Winter Soldier that I was the most excited for.
Mm-hmm.
And so far it does not disappoint. I love What If, like the What If comics. I love the idea of the What If comics. I don't know. I think it's being a fandom person for such a long time that, like, the fact that these books, well, first off, the fact that these books have always existed is such a testament to the sort of creativity that these guys have always had from the beginning. Like the comic book guys, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, being able to take something and even as they start to establish like their, our legacy timelines and our legacy stories for Cap and for all these other characters, that they're able to go, yeah, but what if we just did something different?
Yeah.
Like, what if this was different? Like, what if this was different? What if we took the tiniest thing and it's just a decision that she made to stay and it changes the entire universe?
Right.
And I think that that's functioning in an online space and functioning in an online fiction space and just being a fandom person from the days of LiveJournal, alternate universes often get like crapped upon. Like they often get like it's an AU, it doesn't really count, it's not main timeline. And Marvel's coming in and going, so about that, by the way. And I just love it. I love the I'm just happy. So,
Yeah.
and that's a
Yeah.
lot for.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, so let's get into a little bit of the story, because there are a couple of things that stood out to me and that I've been wanting to bounce around you guys. My schedule lately has not allowed for me to browse around the internet at leisure, reading stuff. So the stuff's just been staying in my head. But okay, so Loki series. One of the first things we see and is when Loki gets taken by the TVA, we see other people, notably that guy that gets zapped in the when they're going through processing. But someone pointed out that there's a Peggy Carter that's also getting taken by the TVA. Could this be that moment in which she did not go into the booth and then she ended up in the TVA? That's something that I've wondered about. But that's kind of more of a point out. I want to ask a question. Clearly, the power level between Captain Carter and Captain America are different. Why do you guys think that's the case? We'll start with Anna.
Okay, sorry. I was like, oh, okay. So I think part of the problem, and this is why I was so excited about What If, is the logistics of real life, like filming in real life versus cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is something, so it was actually kind of fun. I was at the Big Lots the other day, and I had my wallet, and the cashier is this kid, like 16 years old, and he's like, "Yeah, Winter Soldier could have taken him any day of the week," and I was like, let's have a conversation about that, because the problem is that in the comic books, Steve is ridiculous. Like, Steve is off the charts when it comes to he's practically made a human. Like, there's a level. I mean, he's not to the level of actual mutants or actual like celestial beings and stuff, but he's pretty powerful. So what we see in the What If cartoon is what I think should have been the power levels we saw from Steve in the movies, but it's way different to have to demonstrate that when you're dealing with actual people and stunt people and all the rest of that. But yeah, her pushing the truck and the truck just flipping over, like,
Right.
that would have been very difficult to film with Chris Evans. Like, I don't know how you would have managed to do that. The only other thing that I can say is like, maybe it's supposed to be closer to comics than it is the Earth 1999. Like, maybe it's supposed to be closer to 616 than it is the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Because the MCU is all over the place when it comes to power levels, and we've talked about this before. I know, before and after I arrived to B.E.A.M,
Right.
there've been lots of discussions about that. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. All right. I get
have
it.
thoughts.
Mo, yeah. Go ahead. Jump in. And then
So,
Darius.
and this may be jumping a little bit ahead to the next episode, but I want to piggyback off of what Anna just said, and that is exactly right. The power levels when it comes to the MCU, and the truth is, anybody who's read a comic book knows that actually power levels do fluctuate. You'll have one character that beats one other character, and then you turn around, and then another issue, this other character gets dominated by the character that previously they were able to beat. So I will say that I agree that I think this is more logistical. Hey, these are cool things we would have loved to have done in a movie, but I think it makes more sense for in a cartoon being able to stop a truck. That being said, though, I will say I do also I do also feel like it'd be a great idea and a great concept to explore if they said that part of the reason maybe perhaps her strength is more increased is because of her makeup, because her DNA and her makeup is different from a man's. And even though at the time, and I think it would be amazing to sort of have that exploration to say that they were so gung-ho in getting a super soldier man in there that they ignored testing and trying it out on women, and women actually may have actually been better suited to receive it, better suited to actually to get out the augmentation from it. The other trade-off is, I think when it comes to Steve, Steve to me feels like somebody who pulls his punches. Peggy is somebody who actually is trained. Let's be honest. If you were talking about skill level,
Yeah.
Peggy is trained
She's also
way more than
healthier. She's
yeah,
also
she's
healthier
trained.
than Steve at the
Yes,
beginning.
that's true actually. So you're taking actually the starting point is a lot different as well. Peggy is trained. She's actually that's the reason why I think when they have that first encounter with the Nazis and the truck, she is versed. She is just like this is somebody who's already had trained, so muscle movement is a lot faster for her. Steve, I think it took him a while to get to that point, and and you don't really see his full potential to like when you're getting to the Avengers movies. Like I think actually by the time you get to Winter Soldier, Captain America's done a couple of missions and he's really gotten into his groove. But
Okay.
again, I think actually this was more of a logistics thing than it was. But like I said, I would love for them to sort of come out and say, no,
Right.
Peggy's DNA was actually better suited for the formula, and the formula actually, worked better on her than it did on Steve, because that would be chef's kiss.
All right. Points made. All right, Darius, what you got?
I have a question. You said that that they pointed out that there was a Peggy Carter that was being taken in the Loki episode. You said,
Yeah, it was episode
the background,
1. Yeah, in the background. Mm-hmm.
was she this version, or was she a super soldier at that point, or was she
No.
simply an agent?
Just red hat and blue suit.
Just
Okay.
regular suit. It looked like she could have been from that scene. Honestly, I have to review it, but
Okay, so she wouldn't be super powered in this version then. Okay. I honestly had not really considered the whole thing about the hyper power level. I'm just looking at it like, oh, okay. She knocked off a truck. I'm wondering if Steve could possibly do that. I mean, we've seen him do kind of all kinds of crazy things. But yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think it's just artistic license between the writers and everything, and they'll figure it out. As I understand it, this thing is the what ifs aren't just being told just for leisure. They're going to be canon, as I understand it, as we progress through the whole thing about multiverse and timelines and variants and everything. So at some point, we're probably going to revisit. Hopefully, we'll get to see a live action Union Jack Carter or Captain Carter as a thing. So I don't really stress too much about it. I mean, like you said, comic writers, they all do different things, different variations of who can fight what. Can Hulk beat Juggernaut? Can Juggernaut beat Hulk? Et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I don't really read too much into that. It just did make for a nice visual storytelling.
Right.
It was a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, that's as much as I can really say.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just think it's pretty much a simple thing, not as complicated as we might think. But
okay, but yeah, it's just it was just a noticeable thing, so I thought I would point it out, and I definitely so as thought out as all of this stuff is, I feel like it may be a little bit more than just okay, this is a animated version, so they can do more, which is valid. I'm not saying I'm the expert, but this is just my thought. But I will say I definitely agree that Steve probably holds back a lot. If you look at his feats of strength, helicopter pulling, right?
Right.
But also
He's so stupid. I love him so much.
Right. Yeah. Obviously there's some physical issues with that feat, but still the feat of strength for what it is pretty powerful for someone who's supposed to be peak human. Versus superhuman, right? But I will say at the end of Infinity War, when he was able to hold up Thanos' arm, yeah, that's pretty strong.
Well, it's like that that Spider-Man run where my God, we found out that Peter's been pulling his punches the whole time, and you're like,
oh yeah. No, exactly. The Superior Spider-Man, where Doc Ock is just like,
right.
whoa.
He gets put in Peter Parker's body, and he goes up again, and he annihilate someone.
He wrecks people, and he's just like, wait a second.
Yeah, he's like, he pulls his hand back. He's like, oh, so he's been pulling his punches the whole time, and it's like, yeah, because he's a good guy.
Yeah, he doesn't want to completely annihilate you every time. He's not One Punch Man. His name is not One Punch Man. He's not punching you to just take you out in that once. So I just want to take a hard stop here. Can we talk about the animation?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
animation was
amazing.
I think actually I love that cell style that they chose for this. It is amazing visually. It is just I feel like it is taking a comic book and just putting it on a screen. Like that animation style that they picked, I think was the absolute best style. They could have gone with any of the myriad of styles, including actually up until I would say even like CGI, and with what a lot of the Disney movies are now is basically CGI.
Yeah.
And there's obviously computer animation in this as well, but this style is just it's amazing.
There's this one shot of Peggy jumping when they're at the castle, and she goes over the moon, and her legs are tucked in, and I am like, if that is not a Sailor Moon reference from somebody on that staff, no, I saw it, and I lost because I was up at 3:02, so it's like 3:20 at that point, 3:25, and I lost it. I was like, this is absolutely a Sailor Moon reference and animators do that all the time. They like reference things that have influenced them in their work. And so when she jumps and she spins and she's right over the moon, I screenshotted it to my background because I'm just like, it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, big fan of the animation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely as far as that is concerned, my thought was, especially after episode 2, it's like, we all know, DC has been the leader as far as, animated features. But and Marvel has been the butt end of a joke for no reason. I mean, I always wonder why there's such a difference in quality, but now this is different. And plus, on top of the fact that this is not just random, we know this fits in to a continued narrative. It makes it even better. It's significant. But yes, technically, the animation was amazing, and just the expressions, the use of slow-mo, right? All of that stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. One more little
fine.
nerdy geeky part, and then I cannot wait to get to talk about episode 2. I'm sitting here like, yeah, this is great, and I'm the Captain America person. Like, that's my thing, and I'm ready to talk about episode 2 because I'm like, wow.
We're getting there.
The scene with the fight, there was a whole bunch of swing dance moves in the fight scene where they're talking about the dance. Basically, this is after Steve and Peggy have had the conversation about the dance, and there's moves where like she launches herself off of him, like when he's in the suit, which Iron Giant, by the way, like absolutely. Yeah. But she launches herself up, and then there's a scene where she's spinning, like with her legs and her hands out, and all of those are swing dance moves. Like it's choreographed as a dance between her and Steve, and I think it's beautiful.
That's an excellent catch there. Thank you for interrupting to bring that out because that's worth it. I didn't consider that.
So real quick, actually, also I did want to point out to Darius because I know Darius brought this at the top about the Nazi champion, the Hydra champion, and who we all suspect was the Hydra champion.
Yeah, go ahead, Darius. Bring that home because you pointed that out earlier.
Actually, I suspect mine was different than yours. I thought it was from the Cancerverse.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a storyline.
Yeah,
a particular storyline called the Thanos Imperative. It was like the tail end of the DNA when they would take over the cosmic stuff. And there's a story where basically you had a version of a universe where the original Captain Marvel did not die of cancer.
Right.
Literally at the moment that this happens, these creatures that are basically Cthulhu take over that universe, no one dies anymore.
Mhm.
And they're literally just gigantic Cthulhu. Like the whole universe practically is Cthulhu. And they go to the 619 universe looking to kill Thanos, as he is the avatar of death, so that nobody can die anymore. I thought that this was kind of a reference to that creature.
Right, that's a Peter Quill and Rich Rider story.
Yeah, that's
Nova. Yeah.
That's how they seemingly met their end at one point. Yeah.
So, Mo, are you referencing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. by any chance?
I am referencing a very popular, lives in the space in between, big old eyeball in the middle of his face. Sumagorath.
Shumagora. Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was my thought when I when I saw that. I was just sort of like, that tracks. That tracks. Like the it'd be great to see the Cancerverse. It'd be great to see the Negative Zone. I feel like for that first episode, Shumagorath is probably the one that most Marvel fans are familiar with. So once they see those tentacles, they're going to be like, that's the one. Because of all those enemies, that's one of the only ones that has appeared in another platform other than comics and animation, is actually video games. He's actually, I think, in one of the Marvel
Versus Capcom.
Either Marvel vs. Capcom or Marvel Superheroes. He is actually one of the.
He does show up.
See, and I went full Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So when, sorry, when you brought it up, I was like, yeah. Not only that, because the interactions between Howard and Peggy were so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or sorry, Peggy Carter. Like the banter and the relationship between the two of them hit such a sweet spot where I was like, oh, I gotta go back and watch that. Like, I gotta go back and watch Agent Carter. So I thought, like, yeah. So I went full like, this is them going, yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon anymore, but here's your monster. Like,
right, exactly.
But I love this though, because like we're each going, what if it's this? What if it's this?
What if
it's this? And it's like, that's the whole point. That's the whole point, is
Exactly.
to sit here and go, sky's the limit. So
I will say, actually, it's a very also interesting. It's the great thing about these what if tales is also the fact that you open this door and then you start pondering, what are the other things that change? Like, obviously, Howard Stark, for all intents and purposes, created Iron Man.
In this
so by the time his son comes around, does
Right.
his son actually improve upon the technology? Is he even influenced?
Tony, but does Tony exist?
Does Tony exist? That's another very good, valid point. Does Tony even exist? And if he does exist, is he a different person? Is he living up to his dad's shadow? Like, there was a lot of that in the MCU, in the movies, about Tony sort of struggling with living in his dad's shadow and stuff like that. But on his own, he was his own genius. Who's to say that his father's role in the war didn't actually go ahead and actually spread out to an even larger influence? Because again, Bucky is not the Winter Soldier anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that Howard Stark did not die by the hands of the Winter Soldier. So the possibilities of that just start. He could be alive in this universe,
right?
Still, an old little man.
I don't know if you've ever seen the fan theory about why he was killed, like why Howard was killed, and it was because he was still looking for the Tesseract, and at the time it was just a weird like Tumblr thing that I saw, but I really liked it because it played into the geopolitical like nonsense of the time, like of the early 1990s and late 80s, which is if you had a conglomerate ready to put clean energy into a world that is racked with war over oil, yeah, you're going to kill the guy who's trying to make clean energy. So they sent the Winter Soldier after Howard. At this point, Howard has it. He doesn't need it. This is a world in which they've had the Tesseract from the very beginning, or at least knew what it was able to do, versus we lost it at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And he's been trying to find it and recreate it, and his son achieves it, etc. But the whole thing, I mean, Nick Fury was real nice too. That was the part that I was like, this is the weirdest thing. Like he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Who is this? Who's this? When Steve woke up, he was like, "Get up, let's go."
Yeah.
And he was like, he's like, "Are you okay, ma'am?" And I'm like,
Well,
okay.
not only that, but also Captain Marvel gets influenced by this too.
Right.
By
Yeah.
it's all these branching things.
Right.
But again,
There's a lot.
I think actually, I don't unless there's. I mean, that's my last point on this
Yeah.
episode.
Well, I'm going to say, well, let's go ahead and because I know we want to move on to episode 2, but before that, if you guys want to, let's say, point out your favorite moment in the episode, and then give the episode a letter grade, and then we'll take it out to the recap after that. So let's go. Who wants to go first? I'm gonna pick somebody. Okay, Anna, let's go.
Probably my favorite moment. Probably my favorite moment. God, there's a lot. I do think it's the Sailor Moon Peggy Carter over the moon thing, but in terms of like actual like character thing, I do love that Bucky got yanked up onto the train and didn't have to suffer and live a nice life and wasn't the Winter Soldier and didn't suffer at the hands of Hydra. But I am a Bucky person through and through, and I give the episode an A-. There's some things that I would have changed, but I overall was very happy. So,
okay, who got next? Darius.
Well, I'm still trying to think of exactly what my favorite moment is. I think probably seeing Peggy push this creature back into the portal and then vanishing, and Steve's reaction and everything. So it's like, dang, they broke him up again, and I could kind of guess what was going to happen, how the episode was going to end at that point. But yeah, I give this thing an A-. It's nothing's really bad per se. It's just not super perfect, but there's nothing bad about it either. I mean, I can't point a single flaw in this show. But I absolutely love it. And like I said, since these things are supposed to be canon, I really do hope we get to visit this iteration of characters again at some point.
All right, Mo.
I'm actually gonna do the three-peat here and say A-. I think if I had to pick a favorite moment, it had to be the crystallization of Captain Carter becoming, for lack of, even though she's never called this, and even though she's called Captain Carter, when she becomes, in my mind, Captain Britain, is in that fight with the tentacle monster. She grabs a sword, and she has her sword and shield in hand. And if anybody knows about Captain Marvel, I mean, it's about Captain Britain, they give them a choice of the sword of might or the something of right. I can't remember if it's a shield or something else that they give them, and whatever they choose, that's how they become that champion of that's how the version of Captain Britain that they become. And so that was the one thing that I think, if you were to take this character now into the future Avengers and what it would be, I would imagine that they would call her Captain Britain. Not Captain Carter, although her identity is not secret. Similar, I think, to the same. It comes to the same sort of situation that they have with Gwen's, Spider Gwen. Spider Gwen is not her name in the comic books, but
right.
People refer to her as Spider Gwen, and that's how everybody knows her. And so Captain Carter rolls off the tongue, and that's why people refer to that. But I think I was able to crystallize why exactly it's an A- for me, and it's because it is beat for beat almost the Captain America, the first Avenger. Like, I think that's what it is. Is that all in all, you can look at this episode, and yes, there's a couple of twists and turns, but ultimately you got this starting point, this middle point, this end point, except that the roles are reversed.
Right. Yeah.
Next episode, not that at all.
Right.
Next episode goes a completely different direction. But this one is a good. I would say it's not a bad thing necessarily. Like, for us as fans, it's sort of underwhelming, but it's not a bad thing for general audiences. Like, if you were going to go ahead and not subject, if you were going to go ahead and subject implies it's negative, but if you wanted to introduce someone to What If, you would give them a very simple version of What If. What if
Right.
you change these two characters and then follow that stuff? The
Right.
next episode, you throw all that out the window and you said,
Correct.
we're going to switch the characters again.
Yeah.
But this time it's going to be completely different.
It's a
Mhm.
gentle easing into something for a non comic book reader, like
Right.
someone who has never picked up. And that's also something that I've been discussing with a couple of people about it. Is they're like, it's so short, it's so fast, it's so there's not enough there. And I'm like, right, that's a What If comic. A What If comic is
That's
a
exactly right.
one shot.
Right.
One time, you never see it.
And that's it, and it's over, and then you move on from there. But yeah, that was what I was saying, that there's stuff that I would change if it was me. From a fan point, there's things I would change, but in terms of like easing you into what the rest of this show will be like, it's a nice little, like, this movie, you saw this movie, you've seen it
Yeah.
a couple times, here you go, it's
Right.
a little different.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
it. So
Yeah. So what I have to say, I mean, it's pretty close. I'm gonna give it an A, honestly. A little higher than you guys, but my favorite moment is certainly just the first emergence of Captain Carter in the uniform, the pure excitement and enthusiasm she had was like, I could totally see myself being that stoked about being able to do what she just did. But it was, I found myself smiling and mirroring her enthusiasm. Throw the shield again. Do it again. You know what I mean? So
Let's go again.
So it's just like, yeah, I really enjoyed that, and so sure, it was a little fast as far as pacing, but we all know why. I'm not knocking too much on that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the episode, and that's why it's an A. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get into the second episode with the recap of What If T'Challa Became Star-Lord by Mo.
Oh, I'm doing the recap?
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
No. We'll do it, man. We'll do it live.
We'll do it
live.
Yeah.
I'll help. I just watched it before I came up here to record it, so I had to do the
tag
makeup
team.
again.
Usually that's what I do as well, but actually no, I'm good with it. So we start off the episode with the introduction again of the Watcher, of just sort of giving us hey, this is the world that you know, and T'Chaka and T'Challa are sort of having a conversation of the that's a flashback. It actually starts in modern day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it starts with the infiltration of the temple to get
that's right. It starts with the infiltration, and then we get so the infiltration works out pretty similar to Guardians of the Galaxy 1, except actually T'Challa gets the Infinity Stone. He is stopped by Korath, I believe Korath is his name.
Right.
And unlike Star-Lord, who introduces himself with this, I'm Star-Lord, and Korath is like, who? This time around, he is just like fanning out. He's just like, no, he didn't even have to say his name. He's just like, you're Star-Lord. And he's fanning out, and he's basically fanboying, and just like, oh my gosh, you don't know who this is. This guy did this, and this, and this. So basically, you get already the impression that he is a superior, if you will, Star-Lord. In their banter back and forth, Korath is like, listen, I still gotta, take you in. I still, I'm still also trying to get this as well. But again, in the mix of that fanboying, and so he's can we fight? Can I punch you and all this stuff? And he's like, yeah, go ahead and do this. And they're fighting, and at one point, Korath punches him, and he's just like, oh my gosh, did I hit you too hard? He's like, no, hit harder. That's what you're supposed to do. So they fight all the way through. He's able to overwhelm all of them, and he leaves with the Infinity Stone, and he's about to leave, and then he's just like, you know what? This guy seemed like a solid guy. I'm gonna go ahead and take him with me. I'm gonna recruit him. He grabs him, and he gets outside, and when he's outside, he basically is surrounded by these troops, and they're gonna go ahead and obviously they have him surrounded. To which T'Challa announces, a Ravager never flies solo. No response, and then he repeats it again. A Ravager never flies solo, and he gets, one of the soldiers is like, "Is that like a catchphrase? Are we supposed to do something?" You hear familiar whistle, And zipping through the air is this arrow go, which introduces us to our favorite Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins actually then picks up and says, like, who's this guy? And he says, well, somebody I picked up. He seems like he's really cool. We'll go ahead and we'll induct him into the team. They board their ship with the rest of the Ravengers. And then we get introduced to how this scenario happened. So again, now we go back to T'Challa and T'Chaka. T'Challa is asking his father why they aren't going into the world and trying to sort of, explore more and be a part of the world. And T'Chaka is explaining to him, the world is complete and total a bust. There's war, people fighting each other. We don't want any of that. So they go ahead and actually, T'Challa is still not satisfied with this, so he goes as a kid. He goes out and explores a little bit, goes beyond the barrier of Wakanda, and the one change that makes this different from the Sacred Timeline is that the Ravengers, they'd come over and actually we're gonna go get Star-Lord, but our friend Mary Poppins decided that he was going to go ahead and say, hey, I'll just outsource it. I'll get somebody else to go down and get him. And they pick him up, which is a very funny scene because they get to the ship and he's just like, this is not the kid. And they're like, yeah, he's got 2 eyes, 2 ears. It's the same kid. And he shows them a picture. He's like, no, this is not the kid. T'Challa's not freaked out by any of this. He is completely and totally cool. He's just like, yeah, I mean, I just want to explore. And he's just like, he's like, what you doing out here? And he's like, oh, I'm just exploring the world. He's like, well, you want to see something really cool? This is the universe. And T'Challa's all on board. And that's how his adventure starts with the Ravengers.
Okay, actually, let's do something different. We want to discuss the episode.
Yeah.
And that is the pivotal point. And I feel like in our discussion, we're going to hit on a lot of these major points. So let's go ahead and talk. Let's go ahead and talk about the episode now, and then those major beats will fall in line more than likely.
Thank you for not making me wait. Thank you.
Before you start, I appreciate that. I like this what if sort of thing. You broke apart from the Secret Timeline. And now we're doing something different.
Okay, so we're good, right?
He's gonna show up.
Okay, so we're good. All right.
We're doing a variance. Okay, cool.
So since we're going from the beginning, and I don't have to because while we usually when we do these, I'm like making pins like in my head, like I need to hit this. One of the things that's really interesting is unlike the first episode, we did not get this is where things broke from Uatu, which leads me to think that this may be the same universe that Captain Carter is running in. So that's my own theory that I because I was just like, okay, I wonder if this is the same world. Like, I wonder if this is the same everything. That was the first break. The second is, this was more like a Jeffrey Wright needs to stop. I need him to stop because I'm watching this and I am just like, you're right. I could listen to him. You know that meme that's like, we want the guy from Ant-Man to narrate the whole, whole thing. I want Jeffrey Wright and him to just go back and forth and just tell me everything that's going on. Like I'm good.
I almost want what I want with him is I want him to just introduce every Marvel movie. Like I want him to just have like a 2-minute sort of piece at the beginning of every movie.
But also
where he just talks.
The fact that so again going full comic book geek, like the fact that Uatu is the watcher that breaks makes him like I love him so much. So I'm just sitting here like I'm so happy they chose you because you're doing such a good job and it's so much character and so much like gravitas and like anyway. So yeah, the scene where he's like, oh god, it's Star-Lord. Like I watched that and I was like, oh no, so this is a completely different world because in the original with Peter Quill, it's like I'm Star-Lord. They're like, who? And it's like, what are you trying? Like, okay, cute. Like, you're trying to make it a thing. And here, he's like full on. Like, I met Mark Hamill once, and that was me. That was me. Yeah, I was losing my mind. Like, can we do this? Can I say this to you? Can we try this out? Like, full on. And T'Challa's so gracious, and he's so like kind, and he's there to teach, and he's there to like be a king. Okay, what else you guys talk? Because I could talk for like.
Basically,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Basically, he solves every problem by being cool. simply cool gets you through any situation that he has to deal with.
Cool
And
with
we see,
diplomacy.
yeah, and and like you see it progressively through the entire episode. He's apparently done so much just by like, okay, what if we just did? And one surprise member of the Ravager, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, so he takes him down. They do a great like introduction of the whole team when they're down on the party planet. I forget the name of
Yeah.
it. And you meet everybody, and you meet the whole everybody that has been sort of been inducted into the Ravager family. Um, we don't meet Nebula yet, right? We meet Thanos first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You meet Thanos, and it's still Josh Brolin still voicing.
Yeah.
They brought a lot of these actors back, and that's fun for the whole continuity. And he just basically apparently like just talked Thanos down.
Yeah.
I was
like,
what the hell?
He reasoned with him. Everybody else is out here like, yeah, we got to destroy him, we got to beat him, and T'Challa was just like, what if we just talk? Like, what if we
let's just talk. Let's see what happens. I mean, and the fact of the matter is, he's still the great thing about the character and what they did with him was, so this is in essence to me, this is the Guardians of the Galaxy. These are the Guardians of the Galaxy, because the Rat Pack sort of effect that they have there with Thanos and a very, very femme fatale Nebula.
Oh, so good.
Hair. She's quite different.
She is quite different, and actually, it's funny because we were watching it, and somebody turns to me and they're like, "Hey, so they didn't get Karen to do the voice," and I'm like, no, that's her, but she's not doing the I'm downtrodden and I'm just beaten down and I'm just like, I talk like this.
Well, also she's got that little robotic overlay to her voice as well, because she's been changed so much. So the voice will, sound more humanoid.
Yeah, she doesn't have as many machine parts seemingly.
But she does. But remember, like if you listen to her, she does it's Batman. It's basically like, that's how she talks. In this, it's very light and very.
Yeah, no, and it is absolutely the combination of like it's a heist episode. So I mean, it follows all of the structures of a heist movie or a heist film. From the let's do the plan with everybody in advance and then see how the plan goes, and then in middle of the plan, like in the middle of the heist, we're going to go back and we're going to tell you what the actual plan was. So it was very Ocean's 11, very
the double cross, double cross.
But but the film noir, she walked into my life and changed everything character, so good, like, and especially for a character like Nebula who one of the few things to come out of Infinity War or Endgame rather, because again, for anybody out there wondering, I hate Endgame. Was the relationship hot take? Yeah. Was the relationship between Tony and Nebula, and seeing Nebula soften up and seeing Nebula like she's a character who's been terribly abused at the hand of her paternal figure. So to see her be who she could have been if she had not been broken so badly is redeeming. Like it's really great, because you're like, wow, we could have had this like really funny, really like in control of her whole situation character who has autonomy. Because one thing that so I feel like, so we did the scene where we meet Thanos, we meet all the Ravagers. She shows up, she says, I need your help because we need to go get the embers of something. Paradise? Creation?
No, Paradise. I'm not
Fern
sure.
Gully. I call it the Fern Gully drops. We got to get the Fern Gully drops. It's from the Collector. I need your help in getting it, because if we can get this, we can help what you've been doing, which is saving people. Like, because T'Challa's whole thing is he's trying to save as many people as he can. Part of this is because he was told by Yondu that Wakanda was destroyed when he was a child. And so he's gone on to be like, well, if my homeland was destroyed, then I'm going to save as many people's homelands as I can. So part of the whole thing with the Ravagers is instead of them going around stealing and making money, is they're going around stealing, making money, and then helping people with what they've been doing. So
Where the Robin meets.
Robin Leach,
Robin
right?
Leach. Robin Leach.
The Robin Hood. So she shows up. She shows up, and it's a heist. Yeah, they go, here's the security. Here's where it is. Here's the location. We're gonna give you the whole montage of everything happening. And so she's so in control, and she's so coming back to Nebula. She has she's smart. She's able. She's capable. And again, like these are the reasons why Thanos chose her to keep her. The same reason why he chose to keep Gamora, because he saw all of those things in her, but instead of bringing them up and lifting them up, he broke them down and he broke her down. And so it was so nice to see a Nebula, same way with Bucky in the last episode, where it's like this character who's been abused again and again and again and again, to see them be happy and to see them crack jokes and to see them be, who they could have been if the world had been different. What if something had been different for them? And it's even more of a, not to get too deep into the philosophy of it, but it's even more of a like a credence for what these stories are, which is treat people better, treat people kinder, because your kindness could be the thing that changes who somebody could be and help us reach for our greater selves. Sorry, continue, please.
Don't apologize.
But yeah, no, it's so great. It's so great. And Karen did such a good job. I was like, I love her. I want her in everything.
Well, I think, obviously T'Challa being who he is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't looked, but I swear instead of the Milano, it says the Mandela. That's the name of his ship.
Yes, the Mandela. Yep.
Yeah. So exactly. Priorities and what people hold dear. And especially T'Challa, it reflects in all of his actions. So it's incredible, and you can see the influence, in all of his actions and bringing everybody together, bring about the world of change. So it's pretty.
Don't do that to me on air.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
I liked it. That was a nice touch.
Oh man.
Does it? I saw that on my second viewing, and I was like, did that say? And I didn't get a chance to look into it. But so what else jumped out? I'm gonna say, actually, you know what? Since the first episode, I mentioned power levels. Let's just talk about Thanos there.
So,
what's up with that?
So here's my thought on that. So I think Thanos is, I think he's the same. I think actually, if you're looking at the fact that he got into a fight and got double teamed by Maw. Was it Maw? No, it wasn't Maw. It was
Black Order.
Yeah. No, it was Proxima Midnight and
Black Dwarf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Any way you slice it, I think actually yes. Was he a prolific fighter, and did he beat up the Hulk? Yeah, 100%. And can he take on 3 Avengers at the same time? Yes. 100%. But getting into fisticuffs with somebody is not the same as actually getting into where you can, and this is sans glove, because again, obviously, when he fought the Hulk,
he had the power. He had the Power Stone at that point. So
he had the Power Stone, but I don't think he was really using it, because again, even the directors have said part of his fight with the Hulk wasn't so much brute force as it was he was a better fighter. Mm-hmm. Because even in his moves and stuff like that, he's jabbing, he's hitting pressure points. Mm-hmm. He's not fighting him just as just like, hey, let's see who's stronger, whatever. There is the one point where Hulk is grabbing him and he twists his arm. But again, even if you go to any kind of self-defense class, one of the first things they teach you is what to do to try to get out of a hold. Sometimes it's stuff like put your hands here and block out and twist, because anything that's an awkward type of movement. So all that to be said, power level wise, I wasn't as concerned with it. I know people were like, oh, he's nerfed. He's like, I don't think so. When you look at who exactly was beating up on him, I don't think actually that they were two slouches either. They weren't, I mean,
no, the Black Order is insane. Like the
Yeah.
Black Order, I mean, they definitely nerfed the Black Order in Infinity War and Endgame, but in terms of like comic book stuff, like they are ridiculous. I think I agree with you. I don't think that Thanos was nerfed. I think that Thanos was, the big difference is that again, this is a Thanos who hasn't basically beaten the Black Order into submission to make them part of his army.
Right.
So like I think that if that fight had, if Nebula hadn't gotten involved or whatever, I do think that like he may have still come out on top, because they were shooting him and it was just bouncing off of him. Like the energy wasn't doing anything. It wasn't until you got into Proxima with her spear that things started to change a little bit. And I still think that he might have, if he had gone full Mad Titan, bodied them. Like I still don't think that he so I agree with you. I don't think that he was the power levels there were off. But
Okay.
I am curious about the element guns. Why didn't the Peter in the comics and in the movies has these element guns, and we didn't really see those, and that was interesting because I guess I associate that with Star-Lord.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting choice, that they wanted to show that he's just a good fighter, I guess. I don't know.
No guns. I mean,
it was all hand to hand.
Yeah, hand to hand. But also, I mean, the thing about it is his power is his persuasion, right? I mean, right? That's his real power in this episode. But or his mind, let's just say.
Yeah.
So he doesn't necessarily need the guns. I mean, he didn't. They achieved the goal. But what I was going to say in sequence with the power level. Okay, so there's debate on Thanos's, but clearly the Collector is on a different level.
Yeah, he's completely
the Collector.
The last
Collector
time
is juicing. Let's
I was
be
gonna
honest.
say
the Collector's juicing.
He ate his vegetables. He ate his
completely
vegetables.
different. He's apparently killed the Avengers. Seemingly, he's killed Asgardians. He killed Gila. He's basically using all their weapons to try and kill T'Challa and Yondu in the big fight, and he is just wiping the floor with them. You're like, where the hell did he get all this? Whereas MCU, he's kind of just chilling. And
not just chilling. He's very, I would say, weak and cowardly.
Yeah. He's just like very like, no, I don't need to be doing this. I need to be off drinking a beer or something.
I think that's the power vacuum piece, and that's where I think, because when he takes off his jacket, because when you're introduced to him, you're introduced with him having this fur coat kind of thing, and his chest is out, and it's all buff. He takes it off, and you can see the augmentations. And in the comic books, I will say, going back to the comic books, because they obviously that's the template. Thanos, part of the reason Thanos is so powerful, it's not that he was born that way. He is a powerful character, but over time, he's also done augmentations, and he's done things actually to augment his strength and augment his durability and stuff. He's not naturally just like that. And so I think that's actually, I think that's where the shift is. Remember, in this universe, the Collector is now almost like a mob boss. He is actually at the top of the pecking order. And so what comes with that, I would imagine, is you got there somehow. And being the Collector, you're collecting all of these artifacts where you're just like basically like, oh, I'm gonna this arm right here. Great. Wooden soldier arm, bam, let's pop that in there. What's this over here? Some wings over here, pop those in there too. And I think that's where the difference is, power level wise, in this with that particular character. I think he's juicing. He's juicing.
Can I say too, also a really brilliant thing? So one thing that I love with there are certain moments in movies and shows that as a writer, like as a screenwriter, I look at them and I go, that was so good. That was such a clever thing. So like in Ultron, when we're faced with the decision of this new character that we like, let's say we didn't read comics, we're just a regular person. Do we trust this Vision person? We don't know who they are. And they have him pick up Mjolnir and go, let's go. And the audience goes, oh, okay, he's a good guy. Because we had this whole scene establishing that is one of my favorite like little things in terms of screenwriting, because it's so quick, it's so instantaneous. We've already established it, given us some really nice character building stuff in the background at the beginning of the film. So we want to know who the Collector is in this, and they give us Korg's arm. He's chopped off Korg's arm and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone from Korg's race, because I mean, it could have. Maybe it's not
okay, but again, I'm saying like we want to know what kind of person he is here. Like we need to know who the Collector is, because again, in the MCU, he's just kind of a weird, quirky uncle who's out here like doing not great things, like But they go, oh hey, you want to see who we are? Yeah, I got this arm off of this dude, and I don't know about you guys, but I would go to war for Korg. Like I love him as a character, and so to see him be like, yeah, I took his arm. You're like, oh, so we're fighting. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Then we see Mjolnir. Then we see the shield. Then we see Hela's hat. And like, I'm not like, okay, whatever. Like he took Hela's hat. Like that's cool. But like when he was like, oh yeah, Korg's arm, I was like, okay, let's go. So I thought it was really good. Like I thought it was a very quick way of going, this is the person you're dealing with. It's not that he's keeping people in cages, because he did that in the original.
Yeah.
He's out here murdering people and taking the best parts of them.
Well, and I think actually, just to be clear, there's nothing that establishes that he is at the power level of, say, somebody like Hela. I think actually him having Hela's helmet is, it's supposed to set the tone for how dangerous he is. But I put that akin almost to what they did in Thor Ragnarok, specifically the scene with Hela walking through the trophy room, and she's just like, "This is a fake. This is fake."
Yeah.
And it was, again, when you go to Thor 1, you think to yourself, "Holy crap! The Infinity Gauntlet's in freaking Asgard."
Right.
That's insane. No, it's a fake. So that's not to say, and I would say that's why you got to sort of take the things sort of at face value. I think they're there for shock value, but you don't know what's fake and what's not. The other thing is that him acquiring those things doesn't mean that he fought people to get them. Again, he's a collector. He was maybe he found somebody else who did acquire it, and he was just like, hey, I'll pay you money. I'll pay you cash money right now to go ahead and get that hammer. I'll pay you cash money to get you that, to get that shield, because he's the collector.
Right. I think my point was more to the alignment question. Like the alignment thing. That's more of what it was, because like I said, the Collector in the Marvel films was not, at least at the beginning, not an inherently terrible guy. Like you don't see, it's not like Thanos where he's like, yeah, I've murdered this whole family and I'm now stealing this little girl. Like you're like, okay, that's a bad guy. But that is also what Thanos, I mean, because Thanos is also extremely old. That's the other thing too. And like, God, I forget who wrote it, but the Thanos Rising and that arc that explains Thanos' beginning. He's just a really smart dude too. So like, he's strong. Yeah, he's able. But part of the reason why the comics Thanos is so scary is that he is incredibly intelligent. And so he goes, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna amass my wealth this way. I'm gonna kill these people. I'm gonna get the Black Order to come be my guys, because I know that I need them as muscle, as strength, as like Corvus Glaive is insane. So the fact that Corvus Glaive is like out here working for Thanos, you're like, yeah, this guy knows how to amass. Like he knows how to build an empire, and the Collector's kind of doing the same thing. We don't know that he killed Hela. We don't know that he killed Thor or anybody with any of the weapons, but we know that he somehow managed to get them, which is terrifying in and of itself. You know?
All right. So let's do what we did last time with episode 1. We can go ahead and just talk about our favorite highlight from the episode, right? And then give it a letter grade. So Does anyone want to start? Yes.
I'll take a crack at it.
Okay.
So, favorite moment is, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the entire episode is a favorite moment. The fact that they, I am a sucker for when a villain is turned into a hero. So having um Josh Brolin you know, reprise the role of Thanos and be one of the Ravagers is, that was a moment where I was just sort of like, what would for let me put it in these contexts. For us wrestling fans, there is always a villain that it seems like a super powerful, like whatever villain that like heel, and the moment they turn face, people lose their shit. It's freaking awesome. They're like, oh my gosh, this person turned. The first time Undertaker turned from being just a a a a a a destructive thing to being a face, it was there's nothing that sort of replicates that feeling. And so if I had to put it down to one particular scene, it's the revelation that Thanos is in fact actually one of the Ravagers, and that T'Challa was able to talk to him, just talk to him person to person, and be like, "Hey, man, the plan that you have is sort of flawed, and here's the reason why." Are we doing the rating right now, or are we?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do the
I mean,
rating.
this is an A++ episode for me. I mean, the only one, even with that, with A++, the only little sort of blemish I see in this was the exclusion and hearing the stories in the background about it of Dave Bautista. Like, I think the voice actor that they picked, I was just sort of like, why did they pick this guy? Just like he didn't even like, maybe he wasn't supposed to try to sound like him, but the cadence and the sort of mannerism of it. The guy who did Chris Evans's voice in the previous episode, there were times where I thought it was Chris Evans. I was like, that he did something to make sure actually that his voice at some point sort of mimicked it. Not so much here. And so it's a very, very small thing, but it was one of those things where I was just like, man, you got all these people here. Heck, they even got what's his name, Seth Green, to do freaking Howard the Duck. Seth Green is in this piece.
Right.
Benicio del Toro is in this piece. I mean, that's the only little. Even actually Korath, I was surprised when he
Right.
was in that, and I was just sort of like, "Holy crap, is that?"
Jamin Hensu.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm like, he's in it. So that's the only blemish, and it sucks that actually that he didn't get to record, because I think I love his character. I love actually um and now I'm drawing a blank as to his name.
Dave Bautista.
Yeah, but the character
Drax.
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 That's correct.
I love Drax.
Yeah.
I love that character. I've grown
Oh,
to from the
okay.
first movie to all the way through all these movies. I've loved his comedic timing, and it was, I know he wasn't going to be a big part of the episode, but his particular voice and delivery makes it. So that's an A++.
All right. Wants to go Darius or Anna?
Darius, go.
I like seeing little eye catches. I enjoyed seeing Howard. I love seeing Cosmo the space hound. He joins them and everything. I was like, oh, he's so cute. But that actually kind of leads me to my actual favorite moment of the episode was the denouement where T'Challa brings the Ravagers and chooses to live in Wakanda. They actually make peace with everything that's happened, and they talk about these great adventures that he's had, and I'm at the very end there's a dedication to Chadwick Boseman, and it's just like, oh, okay, I'm hurt, I was like, I was done. And then they added that little bit about Ego visiting Peter Quill. I was like, oh, okay, we can come back to this. Okay, all right. Yeah, this is definitely an A+ episode for me. Not, like I said, not that the previous episode was bad or anything, but this one just hit home more for me, I guess. Seeing this is Chadwick Boseman's final performance and everything, and I'm glad that he got to participate. alongside his friends and everything, his fellow actors. And yeah, it's a very good fitting farewell that they usually pretty much tell you like he's just somewhere out there doing his thing, and we just think of him that way.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I don't know about his final performance, actually.
Well, I guess it's a show in general. It may not be.
Fair,
Yeah.
That is how this has been billed. That this has been his final MCU thing, and that is how it's been built. So I'm just going like, okay, let's leave it at that.
Right. All right, Anna.
So for me, it's definitely an A++, and just to beat Mo, A+++.
Oh,
I gotta.
Fight.
You and I have a
Fight.
the thing. And in terms of like since you asked us with the Peggy episode, I'm like, what's gonna be my favorite episode, like part of this episode? And I'm torn. So I'm torn between the conversation between Yondu and T'Challa before they go down to Wakanda. But I do think that my actual favorite moment. Okay. So the conversation between Yondu and T'Challa, in which he basically explains that because of the type of person that T'Challa is, wherever he goes, home will be. Like, that's such an important thing. I think about a lot of these properties not just necessarily as a fan, but because I'm a former teacher. I taught for 10 years. I always think about them in terms of what is it that the kids that are watching this are going to walk away from. And part of the reason why I brought up Sailor Moon with the Peggy Carter thing and all that other stuff, like anything I ever bring up, is those are the things that when I was a kid affected me and how I looked at the world, and the things that, like, in moments of hardship, like, I could lose myself in these stories of heroes. And so the idea that because you are who you are, and because of your spirit, and because of your nature, home will be where you go is so important. The second part, and I think this is actually my favorite part just because it touched me emotionally, and it's kind of the same thing, is when T'Chaka is talking to T'Challa through the hologram, and is explaining to him and says to him, you are one light in the billions of lights that are out there, but we're going to find you, is such an important, like, not just because it's his kid. I mean, obviously it's because it's his kid and he loves him, but because every light matters. Like, every light matters, and it's what T'Challa's been doing out there. He's been trying to save people. He's been trying to save as many people as he possibly can from the fate that he thought his people had. And so to have his dad explain that, you know, it wasn't just that he was his son, but that he is who he is, and he's worth finding out there. And that, I don't know, I guess it's a question of individuality in a universe as vast as ours and as vast as theirs. And do we matter when we're displaced from where we are? Like, if our story is not the story that we've been telling ourselves, do we matter intrinsically out in the universe? So definitely one of those two moments. Also because it's them talking to Chadwick, and it's like, you know, the weight of that hanging over it. Because I think one of the saddest parts about Chadwick's story and his life and how it ended up was how sudden it was and how soon it was. But one of the best things and the greatest things about Chadwick's life is how much he did in the time that he was here. And we have now not just a T'Challa who is the king of an African nation, but we now have a T'Challa who is an explorer amongst the stars. And so all those, you know, I think about all the little black boys that I had in my first and second grade classrooms who, like, maybe they weren't big on the let's be a fighter, you know, let's be a king and a martial artist, and let's instead turn to the diplomacy and to the let's sit down and talk, and to the Mandela, like let's have conversations thing. And I think it's so wonderful that there's an explorer T'Challa now that is out there exploring the stars. And in terms of the only detraction, like the only negative for me in this, is that as a Peter Quill fan, and as somebody who has had to sift through a lot of not so nice things about Peter Quill post Infinity War and Endgame, because I'm a fan of him from the comics. I have a lot of thoughts about Chris Pratt, But I the fact that he is the one who ends the world in this universe, supposedly, like possibly, I was like, we didn't have to leave him working at the Dairy Queen in Mississippi or Missouri. He could have gone on to do other things, but other than that, it was perfect.
So, maybe I am going to outdo you guys because you guys are giving A plus 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 whatever. That's S class. How about that?
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna
Wow.
go S for this episode, which is really just an A and infinite pluses. But so that exact same scene, that's exactly what I was going to point out as my favorite. But I'm going to expand it a little bit more because as soon as his necklace started glowing and you hear the drum,
yeah, the drums.
all of that, like that kind of rediscovering the heritage you left behind deal, that was great. I mean, it was very emotional and it was very captivating to me. And then yes, seeing one of the things I know personally, a father's approval, right, and a father's pride, it means a lot to a son, and to hear, even though this, he left him as a boy, he knew who his son was, and that was just very touching to see, right? So I definitely appreciated that scene as my favorite in the episode, which was overall humorous and just very entertaining. So a fitting episode with one of the brightest actors to grace the screen in Chadwick Boseman. So absolutely great. So yeah, I'm gonna say something else also, just as an aside, as far as What If as a series. The Russo brothers said something at the end of Endgame, doing their press things, that they'd only come back for Secret Wars. And I believe that was a promise. I believe that was a promise and a foreshadow that, yeah, we're actually doing Secret Wars. We're telling you we're doing Secret Wars without telling you we're doing Secret Wars. And, so I'm just saying, when we talked about episode 1 and the Watchers saying that, adding another champion, yeah, that I definitely got that feel. We're stacking up these characters for something big in the future, potentially. But that's my side note as far as a potential direction for this series, because we don't know where it's going exactly. We know it has impact, but we'll see. There's in 2 episodes, so many gems have come out of this series, and I mean, quite frankly, I'm excited that we have 10 of them, and I can't wait to see what else happens. So yeah.
I will say actually that very similar to Anna and this, there were 2 shows that were on the top of my list. But we differ in the 2 primary shows, but we agree on What If. Mine were WandaVision and What If specifically, because of because of the potential of what they could be. When you're talking about, again, I'm a sucker for the multiverse and for alternate timelines and the possibility of exploring it and doing different things, because truth is that we've done that for years now. If you really think about it, you don't put Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and MCU Spider-Man in the same sort of, you consider them separate universes for now.
For now.
However, but again, same thing actually with Blade with Wesley Snipes. Would it be amazing to think that that takes place in the MCU, that all of those stories took place in the MCU? Be great, but the truth is they don't. So the concept of the multiverse and the concept of alternate stories have always been actually there. As a matter of fact, actually, a perfect example is the King Arthur, the stories of the legends of King Arthur. There's so many stories in the Arthurian legend that you could almost consider them to be sort of alternate stories. Sometimes actually they sort of agree with each other. Sometimes they don't. Um, so this concept and having this and having what the end of Loki sort of provided, which going back to the very beginning of the episode, which you had mentioned about Agent Carter being brought into the TVA, that's where I would disagree with you, Leonard, because I think this show is a direct has a direct correlation with the events at the end of Loki. Because now you have all of these branching timelines with all of these different scenarios, and you have the Watcher sort of being like, "Hey, let me show you. Let me come here. Let me show you. Let me take a look at this down here. Look at what happens if this happened, or what if this had." So that Agent Carter specifically that got pruned was part of at the time when they were just doing the one sacred timeline, whereas now they're all over the place. Not to mention the fact, and I know that this week, a new trailer for Eternals dropped.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of little hints in that with the end of Endgame, when they snapped everybody back, and what that meant to the universe.
Right.
Well, because so I actually haven't seen the Eternals trailer. I'll probably do that after we get done here, but I did see screenshots because I'm a nerd and I'm on social media. So I'm interested to see how they start to explain some of the bigger celestial beings, because that's one thing that a part of the reason why Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and just in general the Captain America stories and the Captain America stuff, has always appealed to me, is that I'm coming from DC Comics, so there's a lot of grounded sort of I can see the story here, and I can watch it here, and I see the different players apart, the Russian Cold War stuff and all, that's good for me. The celestial stuff in Marvel is if this is Captain America right here with Agent Carter, celestial stuff starts to open up the world to the point that you're like, wait, hold on, there's a whole race of beings that just chill and watch us, they're able to witness all of our stories
Anna,
all at once.
can we after this?
Yes.
Can we watch the trailer together?
Sure.
Because I want to see your reaction to the trailer.
Absolutely.
I want to live vicariously through your first viewing of the trailer. I want to see and watch you enjoy it.
I do think that that's important. Absolutely. After this, we can do that. But I do think that it's really important to just sort of, the idea that this is directly after the multiverse starts to branch off is, I think, spot on. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what the Eternals does for the celestial, eternal, cosmic being landscape. If they help explain it a little bit more, I think it'll also bring into context some of the stuff that we're watching in the multiverse, because I haven't looked into any of the spoiler stuff too deep for What If. I've seen the images. In particular, there's somebody very big missing from the Thanos Nebula story, that I am very interested to see how and what and how it fits in. But anyway, I think that you're spot on with that. I think that it's going to end up being that this is the direct result of that split, of that break.
All right. So we've all kind of given our general thoughts on the series and progression, except for Darius. So I'm going to let you get the final word before we sign off for today.
As far as the entire MCU, I'm very, very fascinated. The What If, like I said, these things apparently are going to be canon, and I think that they're going to be hidden pieces. As Kang has now been revealed as the main villain and what he's going to do to the Marvel universe, as we saw in Loki. Basically, Feige has more or less said he's going to put all these pieces into place, and anything can come back to haunt you. That's one thing that I'm enjoying the hell out of about the MCU. Anything at any time can come back to haunt you. Um, and was everybody kind of jonesing for the Spider-Man trailer, and Feige kind of even trolling people about the Spider-Man trailer at this point. Even had a Spider-Man No Way Home trailer like sitting outside at one point, I think he did. But yes, this is like, I love how these things are like in snippets. They can basically tell you a whole story of these characters, why we should care about them, very briefly within like 30 to 40 minutes. And so if we should see them again, we'll be like, oh yeah, that's them. Yeah. I'm happy. And so even though people are kind of waiting more for, I just say, X-Men and Fantastic Four to pop up eventually at some point down the road, he's still already putting all these things into motion and saying, okay, we're going to have our great next story arc beyond Thanos. And I'm very, very excited about the direction that this will portend for us. Very soon, we will also see Shang-Chi within the next week or two. Following that, I believe Spider-Man is... No, I'm sorry, it's Shang-Chi, Eternals, and then Spider-Man. And that's a hell of a lot. That's a hell of a lot to like unfold the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point.
Right.
So I'm very, very much... So I really am looking forward to us talking about how those films will play out after this, and that's what I said. So,
all right, everyone. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in. We hope that this episode was good for you guys. I definitely had a lot of fun chatting today. So we will look forward to covering episodes 3 and 4 in a couple of weeks. But until then, feel free to interact. I mean, this is going to be on our social media. Comment. We, of course, see it and we'll respond. But we'll see you later.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.